This is a 190 Q&A practice test. Plaintiff Attorney Mr. Morris, capital M-O-R-R-I-S. Defense Attorney Ms. M.S. period Rios, capital R-I-O-S. And we'll start with the plaintiff attorney. Ready? Of your own personal knowledge, you don't know if Ms. Santos ever turned her turn signals on, do you? No. And that turn signal, calls for speculation, was not on when you got there to the scene of the accident, was it? No. When I say that turn signal, I mean the turn signal of the van. Correct. It was not on when you got there? No. You never saw it on? No. You never talked to anybody who said they saw it on, did you? No. I'm going to review some notes. I don't know if counsel has any questions. I'm going to review some of my notes and I'll see if she does, and if she does, great. I'm pretty much finished. Thank you very much. Can we go off the record? Sure. Let's just take a quick break and then I'll have some follow-up questions for you. Okay, before we do that, I'm going to list next in order Exhibit 3 to the Santos Depot, the next in order for our deposition, which I believe is going to be 23. Is that right? Yes. It's a Google map. Again, it's Exhibit 3 to Santos. We'll take a short break. Just to clarify, before we start, I'm going to attach as Exhibit 24 another. It's also Exhibit 4 to Ms. Santos' deposition. And take a look at this, if you would. She said that this is the location where she pulled her van up to. And I think you'll agree that that's the same position that we saw in paragraph 7211 of Exhibit 14. Is that right? Yes. And that's the position that we see in Exhibit 24 and in photo 7214 that you first saw the van when you got there at least 18 minutes or so after the accident happened, correct? Or at least 18 minutes after the accident happened? Yes. Okay, thank you, Chris. Sure. All right, let's go on the record. Good afternoon, Officer West. I'm Chris Rios. I've introduced myself last week and earlier, and I represent the defendants in this case, and I have follow-up questions for you. Okay, all right, on the traffic collision report, and I apologize if we went over this last time, the diagram on page 4, who prepared that? I prepared that diagram. Okay, and I think you indicated last session that you had gone back to the scene of the accident to get further information to use in the preparation of the diagram, correct? Correct. Okay, do you recall specifically what additional information you needed when you went back to the scene? I went back to use a roll meter to determine the widths of the road and other measurements. Do you remember what other measurements besides the width of the roadways? It would be everything, all of the road information. So the shoulders, the road widths of each lane, and the road width of West Valley Road. All right, anything else that you, or any other information that you obtained at the scene the day after? No. Okay, when you prepared this diagram, did you sketch it out at all at the scene, or can you tell me how the diagram came about? I believe that I would have jotted it down onto a steno pad, filled in my measurements, and that would be it. Then I would transfer it onto the computer. And so this is a computer-generated diagram, correct? It was based off your notes, yes. And did you destroy your notes after the diagram was completed on the computer? Yes. Okay, on this diagram, there are a number of circles in the center of the diagram that are labeled 1, 2, 3, and 4. I'd like to discuss those with you. All right. So let's talk about circle number 1 first. There is an arrow that appears to start above that circle, and it is in the westbound lane, correct? And the arrow then crosses over the double yellow lines, correct? Yes. And then the arrow is pointing to the area where the circle that's number 1 is located, correct? Yes. And the circle number 1 is in the the eastbound lane, correct? Correct. What does that arrow and circle with the 1 represent? That represents the area that I believe the vehicle 1 impacted the rear of vehicle 2. Let me object as lacking foundation, calling for expert testimony. And the arrow, so the circle with the 1 is the location where you believe the impact occurred, correct? Same objections, correct? And what is the basis for that? It was my opinion that due to the tire friction mark that I observed at the scene of the collision on that side of the road, plus the damage to the rear of vehicle number 2, that's the area of impact. Let me object as lacking foundation, calling for expert testimony. The line that leads to circle number 1, what does that line represent? That line represents the approximate path of travel of vehicle 1. Object. Same objection. That would be the motorcycle. Correct. Same objections. Can I have a standing objection of lacks foundation, calls for expert testimony, calls for speculation? Sure. Okay. Just tell me when you want your objection off. Okay. Unless you intend to object to every question on that basis. If I have a standing one, that way it applies to every question. I'm not being disrespectful to you. No, I'm just taking notes. Okay, so again, the line with the arrow that crosses from the westbound lane over to the eastbound lane represents the line of travel of the motorcycle, correct? Yes. Okay, and what information did you use to determine where that line should be drawn? That would be an approximate. It can't be determined exactly where the motorcycle or the vehicle 1 crossed over, but due to the evidence I noted previously, it needed to cross the line at some point, so I had to, on my drawing, put it crossing over the line. You assumed that, you mean? Yes. And what evidence did you utilize to come to the conclusion that vehicle 1, the motorcycle, crossed over the double yellow line into the eastbound lane due to the tire friction mark in the eastbound lane, along with the shattered glass, the damage to the rear of vehicle 2? I came to the opinion that at some point the vehicle must have crossed over the double yellows to reach that area of impact. Just reiterate my objections, calling for expert testimony, speculation, lack of foundation. Is there any other evidence that you observed or gathered at the scene to come to that conclusion? No. Now there is a circle with the number 2 right next to the circle with the number 1. Do you see that? Yes. And that's also in the eastbound lane, correct? Correct. And what does that circle represent? That circle would represent party number 1, Mark Kane, impact with the rear of vehicle number 2, which is the van, correct? Correct. Running objection still on lack of foundation, calls for expert testimony and calls for speculation. Okay, so that I understand it, circle 1 is the line of travel, correct? Same objection. Circle number 1 would be the area of impact, and circle number 2 would be also the approximate area of impact. Same objections. Why did you put 2 areas of impact? Because one would be the impact of the motorcycle colliding with the rear of vehicle number 2, the van, and the other would be the impact of party number 1 impacting the rear of the vehicle of the van, vehicle number 2. I see, so you've got 2 distinct impact points, one for the vehicle, which is the motorcycle, and one for the person, correct? Got it. In other words, Mr. Kane, yes. Did you make a determination that Mr. Kane's body collided with the van then? Yes. And how did you make that determination? Due to some scuff marks on the left rear of the van, along with the blood mark that was on the rear of the van as well. Can you show me the scuff marks on the rear of the van that you believe show that Mr. Kane's body hit the rear of the van? I'm sorry, evidence of his physical body hitting the scuff marks. Is there a photo that shows that? Yes. Okay. It would be picture 7271. Okay, and then would you like me to circle the area, or yes, why don't you do that? Okay, this is a circle of all the evidence that I used to determine that party 1 impacted the rear of vehicle number 2. And that's on photo exhibit 147271. All right, and that's out of our exhibit 14 package of photos. Is that 7471, 7271? All right, the word list. Officer West, capital O on officer. West is capital W-E-S-T. Officer West. Ms. M.S. period Santos, capital S-A-N-T-O-S. West Valley, capital W-E-S-T, new word, capital V-A-L-L-E-Y. Mark Kane, capital M-A-R-K, New word, capital K-A-N-E. Brea Highway, capital B-R-E-A, capital H on highway, Brea Highway. Chris, capital C-H-R-I-S. And that's it for the word list, and that will conclude our 190 Q&A practice test.